Welcome to the Belly Button Window channel and episode 19, part 1 of the Jimi Hendrix story, like you've never heard it before. In this episode, we deep dive into the group's grueling US tour and February of 1968. Please remember to check the channel's community tab and video information page, where you will find links to related videos, performances, and stunning photographs from the period. In February 1968, the Experience went back to the States for their first proper tour, and like their first visit, the tour grew as it went on, with dates being added all the time, until the band were essentially living on the road in America. The Experience were supported by the Soft Machine, and later by the Eire Apparent, both managed by the Experience's co-manager, the ubiquitous Mike Jeffery. It was a long and grueling tour, doing 60 cities in 66 days, but if it did nothing else, it established the Experience as one of the leading rock acts of the day. According to Noel, we were now seriously at work. In February alone, we played 32 shows and did many interviews. The 1968 American tour was the one that did us in. We stopped making music and started doing time. In the confusion, we lost sight of what we wanted to do and started coping badly with what we were doing. And according to Mitch, we were doing 2 shows a night, and after doing a gig, and being a silly lad partying all night and getting an hour's sleep, to be woken up at 7 with a plane to catch didn't go down too well. Frequently they had to call the fire brigade to break down the door to get me up. It was ridiculous. Thursday, the 1st of February, the Jimi Hendrix Experience departs JFK Airport, New York City, flying to San Francisco, where upon arriving they try out their new Fender equipment at the FILLMORE, then meet with Albert King, John Mayall and Mick Taylor of the Blues Breakers. The Experience is headlining, with the UK's John Mayall's Blues Breakers and Chicago bluesman Albert King in support. The trio of acts played 2 nights at the Fillmore Auditorium, 1st and 4th of the month, and 2 nights between 2nd and 3rd at the Winterland Ballroom. Also that day, it was announced that the Experience was voted the best musical group in the world for the year 1967 by Beat Instrumental magazine. According to the book, The Jimi Hendrix Concert File, the first set on Thursday night show consisted of Red House, Purple Haze, Foxy Lady, Fire, and The Wind Cries Mary. Other songs performed over the 4 days in San Francisco included the Beatles, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, Bob Dylan's Like a Rolling Stone, Howlin' Wolf's Killing Floor, B.B. King's Rock Me Baby, Little Wing from the new album, and the classic Hey Joe, plus several others, we're sure. According to the contract with Bill Graham, the Hendrix camp was paid a flat fee of $7,000 total for the 4 nights, guaranteeing 2 45-minute shows nightly between the hours of 9 p.m. and 2 a.m. On the final night, Sunday, February 4th at the Fillmore, Big Brother and the holding company stepped into the position held down by England's Soft Machine for most of the weekend, which was uncredited on the concert poster. As Soft Machine drummer Robert Wyatt had gotten into a row with Bill Graham on Saturday, even calling him a fascist, so the group skipped onto the tour's next show slated for Monday in Tempe, Arizona, and hence the reason Janis and the company filled in. Friday, the 2nd of February, after the Winterland show, Jimi participates in a club jam with Mick Taylor and Jack Cassidy. Earlier that afternoon, Jimi was interviewed by Jan Wenner for Rolling Stone magazine, later published March 9, 1968. It was during this interview that noted rock photographer Baron WOLMAN took iconic photos of Jimi at the Travelodge Motel in San Francisco. Before one of his San Francisco concerts, on the 2nd of February 1968, we met Jimi at his motel, the Travelodge on Fisherman's Wharf. Baron WOLMAN describes the photo shoot. Jimi Hendrix came to play at the Fillmore Auditorium in San Francisco. There were 4 concerts, 2 at the Fillmore West and 2 at the Winterland, the latter being a bigger venue across the street. As the writer was interviewing a surprisingly quiet Jimi, I shot some informal portraits, one of which appeared on the cover of Rolling Stone issue numbered 26. I photographed him at the opening and closing nights at the Fillmore West. This interview was done after the first concert in his motel room with Jan Wenner, who started the magazine talking to Jimi, and I photographing Jimi, who was alone. He was very calm and peaceful. You can see it's very thoughtful. You can see he's posing in a relaxed way. His voice was very calm, very low, but there is something interesting in these photos too. If you see this hat, my other photographer, Lynn Goldsmith, well-known music photographer, wore this kind of belt one day when she was photographing Jimi, and he admired the belt, so she gave him the belt and he made the belt into a hatband. He had a lot of style. Everything he wore looked good on him, and this group of hats is, clearly very appropriate. It was impossible to take a bad photo of Hendrix. He was the most photogenic musician I ever encountered, whether he was in motion on the stage or at rest with his friends. As mentioned, the last night in San Francisco, Janis Joplin with Big Brother and the holding company replaced the soft machine. Albert King remembered that he had participated in a jam session during this evening with Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, and other artists on the FILLMORE and WINTERLAND program. He mentions that this jam session was recorded, but has never surfaced to this day. Interestingly, when it was decided to close the WINTERLAND arena in the late 1970s, an original reel of the soundboard recording of one of the Jimi Hendrix Experience concerts was given to this drink seller at the WINTERLAND arena. The soundtrack is 46 minutes in length, and as it turned out, it was a recording of the concert performed on February 4, 1968. John Mayall's Blues Breakers stayed on in San Francisco for a few more days, and on the 9th of February played the Fillmore Auditorium as headliners supported by the Loading Zone and Arlo Guthrie. Albert King, one of the original American electric bluesmen who popularized the Chicago sound, played the Fillmore again later in the year, June 26, 1968. Monday, the 5th of February, the group flies from San Francisco, California to Phoenix, Arizona, then drives from Phoenix to Tempe. During the trip, Jimi asks to stop to take photos from the top of a mountain. Later that day, Jimi is interviewed by Dave Gozensky for Arizona State Press. The band then performs one show at Sun Devil's Gym, Arizona State University, Tempe, Arizona. No set list exists for the Tempe concert. Neville Chester's road manager noted, "Not a very good show." Tempe concert review titled, "Experience Excites Crowd" by Dave Gozensky. It was Monday night at Sun Devil Gym, and the soft machine was in front of a sold-out audience setting the stage for what was to come. The crowd applauded gratefully at the sights and sounds produced, but an occasional put on Jimi Hendrix left no doubt as to who had drawn this migration of spectators to the gymnasium on the first night of spring classes. The growing anticipation was evident backstage at 8:15 a.m. as people scrambled to piece together details and check on arrangements. But among the flurry sat a man, his bell-bottomed legs stretched out from the bench while his back rested against a row of lockers. He was disconnected from the devastation and acted almost without caring about what was happening around him. It was Jimi Hendrix. He smiled warmly when he was introduced and spoke so softly that it was difficult to distinguish his words from the surrounding noise. "Oh, I'm a little worried," Hendrix confessed when asked about his easy manner. "They're having problems with the amplifiers, and those aren't the ones we normally use," he said. Another blockage that Hendrix feared would cause his performance to fall short of expectations was a cold that tormented him from the beginning of his recent American tour. And then, of course, those kids over there expect to hear the records we made and think we'll sound exactly the same tonight. Sometimes a 3-minute record can stretch to 10. It all depends on the audience. It was now 8:30, and someone shouted that everything was ready. He panicked for a minute when he thought his hat was missing, that someone had stolen the original in Copenhagen. But then, finding it, he regained his composure and walked through the swinging doors and onto the stage. Hendrix put on his guitar as if it were another item of clothing. He touched her, made her speak and sing. He played it in a dozen different positions, including between his legs and with his teeth. There was no limit set for this man and his instrument. His two English partners in experience, drummer Mitch Mitchell and bassist Noel Redding, waited, watched and marveled with the crowd until Hendrix and the guitar were ready for them. The climax came with a tremendous explosion of electronic wavelengths. The once silent Hendrix was now on top of his own world, and the crowd understood that and shared some of it too. It was a good experience. Jimi Hendrix scores with Jim concert 50 years ago. In a commemorative 50th anniversary piece celebrating the ASU's past, this recollection of the Hendrix concert was published. 50 years ago, the Sun Devil Gym was the main basketball and gymnastics facility. But for one evening in February 1968, it hosted the Jimi Hendrix Experience in front of a crowd of 3,000 fans. Hendrix rocked this house with his wailing guitar and his feedback and distortion, said university archivist Rob Spindler. Hendrix, who warmed up in the locker room beforehand, sported a Native American choker, Afghan-style coat, bell-bottoms, and his signature hat. And he played a white and rosewood Fender Stratocaster. To see Hendrix in this small gym in such close quarters was incredible. Unfortunately, however, the playlist has long been lost, said Spindler. Tuesday, the 6th of February. The group travels by car from Tempe to Tucson. Along the way, they are photographed at Gates Pass in Tucson, posing with Jimmy's electronics wizard Roger Mayer and public relations man Michael Goldstein. All three band members are holding 8mm cinema cameras. Later, Noel films Jimmy at a rock gift shop called Southwest in Tucson, while Hendrix films the exterior of the store. Finally, that evening, they perform one show at the VIP Club, Tucson, Arizona. Thursday, the 8th of February. In the afternoon, members of the Experience are interviewed by Harry Martin in the courtyard of the Holiday Inn for KCRA-TV, and print interviews are conducted with Karen Vitlip for the Sacramento Union, published February 10, 1968, and Debbie Smith for TeenSet, published July 1968. That evening, the Experience performs one show at the Men's Gym, Sacramento State College, Sacramento, California. Concert setlist: Are You Experienced? Fire, The Wind Cries Mary, Manic Depression, Foxy Lady, Hey Joe, I Don't Live Today, Third Stone from the Sun and Purple Haze. Neville Chester's recorded. Shit place but not a bad show. Legendary Jimi Hendrix remembered at Sac State. During his national tour, Hendrix performed at Sac State on February 8, 1968, gathering about 3,000 fans in the pre-existing men's basketball gymnasium. The student-organized club, Students for the Appreciation of Pop Music, sponsored the Hendrix concert and collaboratively made it happen. Its objective was to bring rock and roll to Sacramento. Its first show hosted Janis Joplin with Big Brother and the Holding Company in November 1967. Rick Schulze, co-promoter of the 1968 Hendrix concert and current freelance writer in Oregon, explains, "We had to form our own group and have a professor advisor in order to hold concerts. It was not particularly easy to sign a contract with Hendrix and his band. We booked Jimi Hendrix through Chuck Barnett at Creative Management Agency in Los Angeles. We got him for $4,000 and we sent $2,000 as a deposit but never got any signed contracts back. We also bought a ton of radio commercials." Schulze and co-promoter George Gosling, who were inexperienced marketers, attended the Hendrix concert on February 4th of that same year at the Fillmore in San Francisco. Afraid that Hendrix would be a no-show, renowned promoter Bill Graham allowed them through his dressing room, where they asked Hendrix to sign the contract, and he kindly agreed. George Gosling goes on to say, "We didn't sell any tickets at the door. We were sold out in advance." Around 3,000 fans overflowed the men's gym that had a capacity of 1,000 people. We only had 2 policemen for the show who stood by the door. There was no hostility. The people were there to rock. You couldn't stop the crush of people. I'm sure there's never been that many people in the gym before or since. Hendrix performed his classic songs including Hey Joe, Purple Haze, and Foxy Lady. Skip Maggiora, founder of Skip's Music, a music supply business in Sacramento open since 1973, recalled, even though he was on very limited equipment and a 100-watt sound system to work on, it sounded as if you were listening to a studio mix because he played the room so well, and the crowd went crazy. The opening acts were the Creators, a Sac State student-formed band, and the English rock group Soft Machine. Among the Creators was Maggiora, who was seeking an engineering degree, but instead followed his musical passion after experiencing the extraordinary moment with Hendrix. Schulze and Gosling also pursued their rock and roll dreams to book future performances in Sacramento. Skip Maggiora explains what happened later. Afterwards, we took Jimmy out to have tacos. Jimmy was sitting in the back of our Volkswagen Bug and he was hungry. That's how much of a rock star he was at that time. The concert propelled Gosling as a booking agent in Nevada and everyone else who are still in the music business. It was a kickstart for everybody, Schulze said. Friday, the 9th of February. The Experience arrives from Los Angeles for 2 shows at the ANAHEIM Convention Center, Anaheim, California. Neville Chester's, the Experience's road manager, noted, "Arrived LA 9:30, drove down to Santa Ana to Fender Factory. It took me about 2 hours to find it. Dropped all gear off for repair, then went for a meal. Went back to Fender Factory to collect gear, then we took it down to the hall." The Animals, Eire Apparent and Soft Machine are also on the bill. History will record that during the first concert, Jimmy's amps burned out, one by one. leaving only the bare minimum required for the second show. Chaz and Jimmy were approached by Buck Munger, the Sun amp representative, leading them to immediately change amp suppliers, abandoning Fender in favor of Sun. A review by Amanda Spake for the ANAHEIM Bulletin, titled Hendrix Concert Waste of Effort. The Eire Apparent, a group from Ireland, are fair copiers of well-known rock groups, but its members have seen too many Elvis Presley movies. The Soft Machine, an English group, is different to say the least. The drummer was repulsive, clad only in pink bikini shorts. Their music utilizes dissonance and jazz patterns. I admit they are doing something new, but I don't know how pleasant it is to listen to. Eric Burden was his usual disgusting self. The Animals are fair musicians, the lead guitar player is even good, but their material reeks. With the Animals was a light show troupe. When the Animals Sing San Francisco Nights, film of psychedelic Eric on Haight Street flashes behind the group. This little display puts the Animals on the level of a bad situation comedy on television. The Animals drifted off stage in a cloud of smoke from their smoke machine, and strobe lights and Jimi Hendrix came on. Hendrix is, of course, noted for his use of fuzz tone, psychedelia, etc. All of this is less than impressive. He can also play guitar with his teeth, which is really boss. But Hendrix has a drummer, Mitch Mitchell, who is fantastic. I couldn't keep my eyes off of him. No matter how hard I tried to listen to Hendrix fuzzing away on his guitar, I kept finding myself listening to his drummer. The bass player, Noel Redding, is excellent. He follows the drummer on his bass, giving the music a solid, driving sound. While Hendrix is distorting, reverbing, and doing all sorts of other turned-on things, it is more than obvious that Mitchell and Redding are far better musicians than Hendrix. That concludes this installment of the series. Stay tuned for the next installment, where we will continue the deep dive into February 1968 of the Hendrix story and the band's 3-month US tour. Don't forget to subscribe for future content updates. And by the way, if you have any stories or anecdotes to contribute, we would love to hear from you.